Welcome to the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Serenitas. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. Ryan, how are you this evening?
Not so bad, John. Excited to be here. I missed a lot last weekend. I'll be honest. I was up in in New Hampshire. Did not have a lot of service, so as nice it was to be with family, I missed a lot of football. But in some ways, that's always okay. So
It's
didn't
always good to
unplug.
recharge the battery, man.
Yeah.
Now you're back and you're ready to go and ready to cover some big games here down the stretch. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Yolked. Yolked is one of the best protein products on the market. If you're looking to add lean muscle and enhance your workout, well, Yolked is the product for you. It comes in a powder form at 47 calories. Tastes great. Tastes like birthday cake. And if you take and use it, you will see results over the course of 2 to 4 weeks. Yolked is a safe and effective product, and there's a variety of deals on their website. Visit yolked.com today for more information. Again, as someone who has used the product in the past, and I know a lot of people that have, it's a tremendous product and highly recommended. And we want to thank Dante and his team for sponsoring the show. All right. Obviously, we usually start with Boston College, but we're going to actually do something different here, Mr. Barry. We're going to start with the Ivy League. Then we'll go to UConn. We'll talk about UMass because I'm sure you've got plenty to get off your chest after that one. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Eagles before we look ahead to this weekend. We were talking before we went live, and you mentioned to me that I was at a heck of a game this weekend for the Harvard-Brown game. And it really was, of course, Brown stunning Harvard with a last-second touchdown to win 31-28. It was the Bears' first win over Harvard in 13 years. And you remember some of the big games you've covered in your career that you've been a part of. And for me, big games that I've been a part of as a coach, as a broadcaster, as, someone who's been in media, that game will be one of the best games I ever covered because the way it played out, as I was saying to you in the fourth quarter, you can kind of sense that Harvard was just hanging on and they were just trying to work the clock and get out of there. And if one or two mistakes happened, if a bounce went Brown's way, they could come back and win the game. Now, a couple years ago, I covered that game. Harvard ended up hanging on 35-28. I knew, despite the fact that Harvard jumped out to an early lead in this one, I just had a sense that this one was going to be a similar game. It was. Ultimately, Brown prevails this time around on a Jake Wilcox to Mark Mahoney touchdown pass with 27 seconds left. They connect again for the 2-point conversion. This is a huge win for this Brown program, Ryan, and Paige Messier and I broke it down afterwards. But this is a big win for this Brown program. James Perry has been building to this, and I've known James Perry long enough now. I've covered that Brown program long enough that he's going to downplay it and talk about how the other team is a class act and how they're a great program, and it's a big win in that regard. But if he's not going to say it, if the players aren't going to say it, I'm going to say it. This was a huge win for this program, a win that could set them up to potentially make an Ivy League title run here the rest of this season.
Yeah, especially when you look at a lot of the results around the Ivy League this weekend, it feels like because Brown, it's been a kind of a while since they've really been there, that it's not that it's possible, but like that they're in the mix. But a win like this weekend says, no, we actually can. And I think one of my favorite parts, I think, especially about the Ivy League, is that a lot of these kids are local to New England, right? Matt Childs, Mark Mahoney, Jake Wilcox, all Mass kids, out there doing it, looking awesome. And I was jealous when I watched these highlights. I was like, dang, John was at an awesome game. But I mean, shout out to them. It's a humongous win for the program. And you just hope that they continue that momentum, right? Because sometimes you do see programs like this get that win and then things kind of deflate a little bit. So, and it's definitely a knock to Harvard, definitely, I think, they definitely were feeling pretty good after that first week, right? They didn't really have to work so much against Stetson. So to be able to, this might even be good for Harvard in some ways, right? Because they kind of sat in their hands a little bit in the second half. It might motivate them a little to be like, hey, we can't be complacent. We need to be better. So it might be one of those kind of wake up losses in a way, even though it's only the second of the season. But not much from the run game from Brown, which is something that we have talked about and they need to look out for, I think, in the future. But still, it's a kind of a statement win in some ways.
Oh, huge win. Yeah, and you mentioned Matt Childs. He led them in receiving with 101 yards. I mean, the true freshman from Milton Academy had a big game. And look, the Medway native, we knew he was going to be a difference maker. And this goes back to what I said to you before the show, where when you look at this Brown program, they have done a terrific job of recruiting New England. They get some of the top talent in New England, whether it be, especially at the skill positions, whether it be a running back, wide receiver, quarterback. They place an emphasis on landing some of the top talent in the area, and they're getting that talent. And Childs is one of those guys. You can't say enough about him and his performance, but I think at the end of the day, I think when you look at this Brown program, they got Bryant this week in a game that'll be a battle. It's an in-state rivalry. But I think when you look at this Brown program, this win could potentially serve as a springboard. One of the other teams that was supposed to contend is Yale. After coming off an impressive week 1 win over Holy Cross, they no-showed last week. I don't know what it is with Cornell, but Cornell is their kryptonite. They beat them in New Haven last year. They thumped them this year, 47-23. It's very rare that you see a Tony Reno coach team lose this way. Look, Yale is young at some key spots, and while they had an impressive week 1 win, there's still going to be some growing pains at some key spots, especially offensively. But, man, this was a tough loss. Cornell is good. Jamison Wang, pretty good quarterback. You got to give them credit, well coached. But this is none of us expected this. We knew Cornell could be a trap game. It could be tough for them early in the year, but we didn't think they'd lose like this.
Yeah, I mean, you can't turn the ball over twice, and kind of give them the game here. But I think what's crazy is just how much Cornell jumped on them in the first half, especially, right? Being up 27-14, going into halftime and kind of making it really difficult to come back, in the second half. And like you said, it feels like they're their kryptonite, and it's a tough loss for them because, again, as much as we're saying Harvard, Yale, it's okay to take their licks early in the season. When it's against a conference team, it makes it kind of tough when the end of the year, when maybe you do get wrong in late October, November, and you're trying to compete for that Ivy League title, but you're like, we dropped that important one back there, right? Like you said, Jamison Wang is very solid, but 278 yards and almost put up a 50 burger is not the best look, especially after you kind of had a really awesome win to start your year last week.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. They got to bounce back this week. Won't be easy. They have Central Connecticut State at home, and we all know how good the Blue Devils have been this year. They almost beat UMass 2 weeks ago. Big win at St. Francis. I mean, Adam Lechtenberg has that program rolling. They're coming off a bye, so they're going to be ready for that one. Bulldogs are going to be on upset alert again this week. That CCSU program is on the come, and they're pretty good. Dartmouth survives at Merrimack, 16-14. Look, Sammy, we covered that game after the game. Coach McCorkle talked about the resiliency of his team and hanging in there. This game proves just how talented Merrimack is. I mean, Coach Giannetti, he has a talented bunch there. I can't say this enough, and they have a bye week this week. They have, in my opinion, played the best schedule of any New England team up until this point. When you look at the fact that they went out to Air Force, they played UConn, they've played Maine, they've played Dartmouth. I mean, you talk about stepping up and challenging yourselves and playing a tough schedule. Merrimack has done that, could have very, very easily won this game. Kicker Owen Zalk, the hero here for the Big Green. They improve to 2-0. Of course, they got Penn coming to town this weekend. But, Dartmouth looked pretty good in week 1 in a blowout win over Fordham. Kudos to Merrimack. They always play good defense. They're always tough. But Dartmouth, with all that experience back, Proctor at quarterback, Q Jones at running back, Scott at wide receiver, we expect more out of them offensively. You a little disappointed there by that performance? I thought that they could have been better on offense.
Yeah, this felt like one that, it's 10-7 at halftime, and you're like, all right, Dartmouth's going to kind of find their feet here, and they're going to figure it out and maybe pull away. And they never really did that. It was close until, technically it's by one point, right? 7-6 in the second half. Merrimack outscored them, right? Having a score just to go up and win the game for Dartmouth. But the line was set at 11.5, and to have Merrimack really come close to almost winning is kind of tough, especially when not like Merrimack looked that great either, right? I mean, Jermaine Corbett was excellent, run the ball, 137 yards and 2 touchdowns, but for them to be underwhelming but still win, I think is a testament to what Dartmouth could be, right? If you can win ugly, then you can also win in another way too, right? So I think that's the thing. I'm trying to take that more away from the fact that they didn't look good, because Merrimack's a tough place to play. I mean, that's a nice venue. When you get a lot of people there, it feels like a real, like, high school, almost like on steroids, like, environment, right? Like, people are right on top of you, and there was a lot of people at that game. Probably the biggest game in Merrimack's history for a team that they've hosted for a second straight week. So definitely a little disappointing. 14-29 for Jackson Proctor is not the greatest afternoon. So, but it's still the second game. So
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's early. And like I said, they have a stiff test coming up this week against Penn. How about UConn? 2 in a row. They're 3-2 now. They throttle FAU last week, throttle a good Buffalo team on Saturday, 47-3. Dominant performance. Only downside here is Nick Evers did get hurt. Joe Fagnano comes in and leads the offense. Skylar Bell, huge game for them. Transfer wide receiver. He's been big for them so far. TJ Sheffield has been big for them so far. We know how good the running game is. Cam Edwards was the hero of the running game. We know how good the offensive line is. This is a pretty damn good program at home. And I tweeted this out on Saturday, Ryan. I'm fully committed here. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm taking the Kevin Stone with BC position here. I'm all in on UConn, drinking the Kool-Aid, pumping into my veins. I'm in on the Huskies. This is a bowl team. 8 wins is coming. I'm excited about this football team. They're going to make the most of this homestand. I've been pumping this program up now for 3 years, and I'm finally feeling like this could be the year that they live up to my expectations. Temple comes to town on Saturday, but man, Huskies have looked really good the last few weeks, especially the last 2 weeks at home.
I think especially as difficult as it is to lose Nick Evers, right? For Joe Fagnano to go out there, 217 yards and 3 touchdowns is important, right? Because like there's been a lot of questions over like, can he do it against, solid teams, right? Not just against like the Merrimacks of the world, and to go out there and do that against a strong Buffalo team who obviously they throttled
Winning in Northern Illinois and won. They won in overtime a couple weeks ago.
Exactly,
Northern
right?
Illinois is coming off the Notre Dame win.
Right. So it's that's what I think is so impressive to me, right? And to hold him to 75 rushing yards as well, and CJ Agbana, who's a pretty decent mobile quarterback for the Bulls, to really just be a completely non-factor, right? And what was impressive, right? And to register 3 sacks, right? 6 tackles for loss on the defense, just to complete domination, shut them out in the second half. So I can see why you're drinking that Kool-Aid. It's pretty easy to taste right now when they're looking this solid.
And it's blue, by the way. It's a blue colored Kool-Aid and it's like a blueberry flavored Kool-Aid.
Nice.
But yeah. But it's look, 6-game homestand. They have to take advantage of it. You got Temple coming to town this week. They got to keep it rolling. But as we said a couple weeks ago, if they find a way to even win 4 of these 6 games, you're a bowl team. Yep. They're a bowl team because their schedule is far from daunting. But at the same time, I think that Duke game was more of a barometer. Duke's still undefeated. That Duke game was more of a barometer of who this football team is and who they could be. Right. So it's nice to see. Fortunately, the alma mater, they teased you. You thought that they were going to go on the road and beat a winless Miami of Ohio team. They should have. They took the lead with seconds left, but then they give up the lead when they give up a last-second field goal to tie it, sends it into overtime, and they lose 23-20 to previously winless Miami of Ohio. Speaking of Northern Illinois, we just talked about them. Minutemen are on the road this week. They're in DeKalb to take on the Huskies, but 1-4, man. Next 2 weeks, you got Northern Illinois and Missouri coming to town. Not good.
Yeah, I think it's I really wish that there was some Kool-Aid that I could drink. I'm kind of jealous of you and Kevin that there's.
Kevin's been always drinking the Kool-Aid. I think his was spiked though there for a couple of years.
Yeah, now it's like he's actually tasting it for the real taste.
Right.
But
yes.
I think it's again.
He's on a "I told you so" tour.
Yes. Yeah, and everyone likes to take that victory lap. But like, I missed the game, and then I went back and watched a lot of the highlights of it, and tried to like almost all 22 it in some ways, and it's just watching the final drive was really frustrating because
why are you doing that to yourself?
Because I just had to see what happened, right? Because I knew we were going to talk. I knew we at the press conference Monday, but it's frustrating because you want to see like where are the opportunities that could have stopped it, and they couldn't, right? It's just another time, right? It's just like another thing, like where, and I think what concerns me is you see a lot of people who are the hardcore people of the fandom, like kind of just becoming numb to a lot of it, right? Just it's almost like expected, like no longer being mad and wanting to do something, more just kind of being indifferent to it, and to still not have a solid running game, right? CJ Hester kind of took the mold this week, right? But Jalen John didn't get a lot of carries. Jackson Paredes had 1 carry, right? Brandon Campbell didn't have any carries, and it's just. There's no consistent running game. The best part of the offense is Jacoby Keeney-James. He's been outstanding. Another awesome game for him, 150 yards and a touchdown. But, Jaquan Gimstead was supposed to take that next step. He hasn't. Dominic Mazzotti, 1 catch for 7 yards. Like, it's just the offense was. I'm not surprised the defense is playing well, right? To allow 23 points is solid enough, but especially after last year when they put up close to 50 points on you. But just it's the offense. I thought that this was supposed to be a better offense, and they just haven't taken that step for whatever reason, right? The special teams continue to struggle. It's just like they did get a little pressure. They had a couple sacks this week, which is important, right? The defense is playing bend don't break, but the offense is just still not there consistently, and that's what's doing them in ultimately.
Yeah, that is the problem. And I think we all thought that the offense would be better under new offensive coordinator Shane Montgomery. That hasn't been the case. Obviously, Anthony Simpson dismissed from the team, not with the team anymore. So that's a big loss for them. But they've had some of those young guys step up. The running game, though, the inconsistency there in the carries, and they don't really have a feature back. They have a lot of problems on offense right now. Tyson Fromashon did not have a great game either. He didn't play particularly well. But they don't. The problem is you don't really have a chance to fix it and figure it out. They're playing such a good schedule, such a competitive schedule that they're not going to be able to fix it and figure it out on the fly. Unfortunately, this is an off-season fix. We're going to go to the CAA next. Maine with a big road win, 34-20 over Albany. This is arguably the biggest win in Jordan Stevens' tenure at his alma mater. Maine is now 3-2, and they're starting to look like a team. They do have a bye this week, but they're starting to look like a team that when you look at them on paper, Ryan, this is a team that's going to be a problem for people coming up here because they're starting to feel it offensively. Carter Peavy getting into the swing of things at quarterback. We all know how good that skill group is. Heisey, Montego Moss, Joe Gillette. They got talent on the perimeter. And that defense, the Black Hole defense, is starting to come around again. We saw them a couple weeks ago with a big win at Merrimack, big win at Albany. All of a sudden now, you almost wish if you were Jordan Stevens that you were playing this week because you can try to keep the good times rolling. But Maine looks like they're finally turning a corner here, and they're poised to have a nice season up in Orono.
Yeah, and I think the big thing that we've talked a lot about is the Maine running game and kind of not having that complementary side. But 144 yards this week, Jahari Martin, 82 yards and a touchdown is huge. If you can continue to build momentum off of that, that is going to have a lot of teams looking at what Maine was on their schedule this year to be a little bit more something you got to worry about. Not like they didn't think they had to worry at all, but to show that no, we're back to kind of who we used to be, right? The defense playing super well, and also pretty cool to see the team featured on ESPN with Randy Moss. I did not know this.
Moss is his son, yeah.
I just assumed it was the last name Moss. I didn't know that was his son. That's so cool. So I don't know. They've kind of got a little bit of they've got a lot of gusto right now. I do feel bad they've got that bye week, similar to UNH 2 weeks ago, right after starting so hot to them to go on the bye. But really impressive win. No matter how Albany finishes this season, it's always tough to win there. They're always a tough program. To play them so tight on defense too is really impressive.
Yeah, we had a lot of programs on buys last week. UNH, Bryant, Stonehill, CCSU. Sacred Heart did go down to Delaware, and they got smoked. So we don't really need to relive that one for Pioneer fans. Yeah. We'll move forward and preview the Norfolk State game. They don't need to relive their second straight loss after a 2-1 start. Finally, Boston College survives at home against Western Kentucky, 21-20 in a game that, quite frankly, they got outplayed it and probably should have lost last week. Bill O'Brien talked about it being a trap game after that big Michigan State win, which doesn't look so big anymore after they got thumped by Ohio State. Probably going to get thumped this week. They traveled to Oregon. But this was a disappointing performance for this Boston College football team. Of course, Thomas Castellanos was out with an injury. Grayson James got the start, threw a touchdown pass, ran for another. Struggled early on, but seemed to find his groove in the second half. But if you're a Boston College football fan, I mean, they're 4-1, and you got to be happy about that. A couple wins away from being bowl eligible, but that's a disappointing performance against a good Western Kentucky team. Let's give them their flowers here. They were 3-1 coming into it, played a tough schedule. Their only loss coming into this game was to Alabama. But nonetheless, disappointing performance for the Eagles regardless.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be, and I think similar to what we were talking about with Dartmouth, right? If you can win ugly, that's a character trait that's important to have, right? To not buckle under pressure and let the best of you. And because you know what, this is a game that I would not have said they would have won within the last, maybe few years, right? These were kind of the trap games that these BC teams would win, right? But this could just be that Bill O'Brien difference where he's like, no, we're still going to go out there and get that win. And 232 passing yards is a lot to give up, though, to this team, right? Yep. As decent as they are, right? Lewis Bond to have a fumble, right? Only have 21 yards on 7 catches, right? You need these guys to be able to step up, especially when your starting quarterback is not playing. So credit to Grayson James for still making it happen. I know it's tough to have a spot start like that, but you still got the win, and now you can get ready for more ACC games coming up this week.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And again, they got Virginia this week. They're on the road. That'll be a tough matchup. We'll start our preview of this week's games with that matchup. But that will be a tough matchup for them. UVA is far from a pushover. Should have won up here last year. They kind of botched it down the stretch. So that should be a pretty good matchup. But before we look at that matchup and more, I do want to remind you that you are watching the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Sirenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. We are brought to you by Yolked. Yolked is one of the safest and most effective protein powders on the market. If you want to enhance your workouts, then you need to get yourself some Yolked protein powder. At 47 calories per pack, it tastes like birthday cake. It's delicious and effective. Visit Yolked.com today for more information. And yes, it is made with egg yolk, so that's what makes it even safer and more effective. There's no additives. There's no nothing in the product that you need to worry about. It is a safe and effective source of protein. So if you want more information on Yolked, visit Yolked.com today. All right, Ryan, you ready to preview some football games here? We're going to preview this week's slate. We've got quite a few more games than we had last week on the slate. So that'll be good. We'll have more to talk about in that regard. We're going to start with the aforementioned Boston College Eagles. They travel to Virginia to take on the Cavaliers. They're currently a -1 underdog in this one. Boston College, of course, comes in at 4-1. UVA comes in at 3-2. Should be a pretty good matchup between, actually 3-1. Should be a pretty good matchup between two programs that are on the rise in the ACC.
Yeah, I'm going to go with BC here. I give them the nod just because I like their body of work so far this year. I mean, I do know that for where Virginia has been, I know they've had some troubles in their program, both on and off the field, right? Coastal Carolina is a solid program. You only lose by 14 to Maryland. You beat Wake Forest, but when you look at it, Wake Forest is having a very down year. So I'm going to go with the Eagles. I like, again, what they've done so far this year. Now, I will say this is somewhat predicated on if Thomas Castellanos plays. If he does not play, then
it looks like he will be. He was back at practice this week.
Okay, so if he's playing, I definitely feel confident picking the Eagles. But if he wasn't, I would maybe lean towards Virginia simply because it's in their backyard.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Boston College here. I think they're going to run the football, take care of business. I feel comfortable going with them as the doggy. -1 is nothing. That's an easy number to cover. I think they win by a score. I think that score is a touchdown. I think they keep it rolling. They got a couple of games here before their bye. I think when you look at this UVA team, they are a pretty good team offensively. Tony Elliott done a really good job there, getting his type of guys in to run that Clemson system. They've done a nice job. But I think in the end, Boston College is the more physical team. I think they're going to run the football. They're going to set the tone that way with Castellanos back. I think he's going to make some plays in the running game. They're going to make some big plays in the passing game, and that's going to be the difference in this one. I'm comfortable in taking the Eagles to improve to 5-1 with a win over Virginia. All right, next up we have UConn hosting Temple. The Huskies, I should say, I almost said the Owls. The Huskies are favored by -17. The over-under is 50.5. Given the way this team is playing right now, I'm all over that -17. I'm in on that one. What about you?
Yeah, I would say so.
Mind, Temple comes in at 1-4.
Yeah, and Temple's looked very, very poor this year, right? Blown out losses to Navy and Army. They beat Utah State, who's a very poor program, right? Lost to Coastal Carolina. I don't know. I'm going to go with UConn. I'll take 17 with you. I'll jump on it. I think whenever I see it so high like that for a program like UConn who's kind of going like this, and it's not been always consistent like this, I get nervous. But I'm going to take them just for simply last week for how impressive that win was.
Yeah, you can't be drinking the Kool-Aid if you're me and not take them at that level. Yeah. I inject it in my veins. I want that blueberry UConn Kool-Aid. I'm all in. Basketball school, what? This
Yeah.
is a multi-sport school, not just it is a basketball school, but they are pretty good in other sports. Football's on a bit of a run here. Baseball's been pretty good in recent years.
Oh, yeah.
Hockey's been pretty good in recent years. UConn's the best athletic program, arguably, in New England. I love them at home. I love them in this home set. I think minus 17 is no problem. I think they shellac Temple. They take care of business, and they improve to 4-2. I'm all in on the Huskies, damn it. Give me that blue Kool-Aid. I'm injected in my veins. I'm drinking it all day. All right, next up, we have the alma mater, the UMass Minutemen. Of course, Barry's a UMass Amherst guy. I'm a UMass Boston guy. We don't have a football program, so UMass Amherst football is our program. It's the systems program. So the alma mater, we call them, because we're both UMass guys. The alma mater hits the road to take on Northern Illinois. Huskies are favored by 17. I'm going to say this about the alma mater. I like them in this game from a spread standpoint. I don't think Northern Illinois beats them by 17. I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong. But something tells me UMass plays tough here and loses by 14.
Yes. Yeah. I'm taking Northern Illinois, but I'm not taking them with those points. I do think it'll be another respectable game. Last week, I still thought it was 17 was crazy, even against Miami, Ohio, for whoever they played to be 0-3. Northern Illinois played. They have a little bit better body of work. Obviously, the Notre Dame win, but I do think Don Brown gets these guys to play, right? I think it's important as tough as this is, right? Like he gets them to play. These kids do care. He has them bought in. It's just the results just don't go that way. If we're talking about this in November, I don't know if I have the same thought, but right now he still has them believing because honestly, I think a lot of them might know this is one of their last chances with how hard the schedule gets. So I think they're looking at this as kind of one of those last swing for the fences here for a win, especially against, the thought of them going 0-4 against the MAC of who they're joining next year is a tough look. So give me Northern Illinois, but UMass with the points.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think Northern Illinois wins this game, but I'm going to take UMass with the points. Look, I mean, this is a tough stretch here for them. They got to go to DeKalb and then they come home to play an SEC team. I mean, it's a tough stretch. The big thing this week is you want to be competitive. Be nice to go in there and get the win, get the upset. We would love to see that, believe me. But I think it's going to be a tough game. But this Northern Illinois team kind of lived off that Notre Dame game a little bit, and they ended up losing to Buffalo. Thomas Hammock has done a terrific job there, but they are a little vulnerable in this spot. That's why I like UMass here as a road dog. I don't see Northern Illinois doesn't throw the ball well enough. They're more of a ground and pound play action team. Not sure they're explosive enough offensively to win this game by 17 or more points. I do think they're going to win it, but I think UMass plays much more competitive. All right, let's go to the Ivy League where we've got some pretty good matchups this week, starting with I'm going to start with UNH at Harvard, and then we'll do Bryant at Brown. UNH and Harvard on Friday night. Our Kevin Stone is going to be there for that one. The Crimson are currently favored by -1, coming off a tough 31-28 loss to Brown. UNH is coming off a bye, but the Wildcats are rolling offensively. Seth Morgan and company putting up big numbers. They're 3-1. This could be the matchup of the weekend in college football in New England. It's going to be a great game.
Agreed. This is the best game of the weekend, I think. And under the lights, the best games happen, I think, at Harvard Stadium when they're under the lights. Think about that Merrimack game a couple of years ago. That was awesome. So I'm going to go with with the Wildcats here. I love how they've started this year. They have a bye week to get a little bit healthy. I think Harvard is going to be I think they're going to be pissed after last week and come out hot as well. But I think that the Wildcats have a much more well-balanced offense, and their defense has gotten so much better already this year, which is key compared to last year. So give me the Wildcats, and I think what will be a thrilling game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with UNH here as well as a road dog. I'm going to take them with the points. Look, they're coming off a bye. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. I believe this is the first time these two programs are playing since 1939. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure
you're right.
That's the last time they played, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a long time, but it's great to see this game back. UNH is good, man. And that's not breaking news. They could certainly win the CAA. I mean, offensively, they might be the best offensive team in the CAA. Defensively, look, we all know how good they are with Silver and Ruiz, Wandy Owens, and then that secondary, Toscano at linebacker. We know how good that defense is. Here's the thing with Harvard for me. Seeing them in person last week, Cooper Barkate is a tough matchup at receiver. I think everybody that plays Harvard this season's going to have a hard time matching up with him defensively. Jaden Craig needs to be more consistent. One of the surprises is Charles DePrima, the former quarterback, is now playing receiver for them. And he's still listed as a quarterback, but they're using him as an athlete on offense, and he's a weapon for them, and they're getting him the ball in different ways. He could be an X factor in this game for Harvard, but Harvard traditionally has won games, as you know, Ryan, by being physical up front, running the football. They bring back Shane McLaughlin. They bring back Swampscott's Xavier Bascon. Those are two pretty good backs, but they haven't really been dominant up front. They couldn't really establish the line of scrimmage last week against Brown. That proves to be the difference here, because I think to beat this UNH team, you need to ball control them. You need to keep Morgan and that skill group on the sideline. I don't think Harvard's going to be able to do that enough to win this game. So I'm with you. Give me UNH there. All right, next up, we have Bryant visiting Brown in a rivalry matchup in Rhode Island. Of course, the Bulldogs come into this one 1-3. Tough start in their first year in the CAA, taking on a Brown team coming off a huge 31-28 win over Harvard. The Bears are favored in this one by 7.5. Look, you can look at this game and say Brown could be coming in and have a letdown. I don't think it's going to happen. This is a rivalry matchup. This game means too much to them. Brown and Bryant and URI, of course, in essence, play for the Commonwealth Cup, even though it's really Brown and URI. But state bragging rights are on the line. And if James Perry wants people to take his program for real, they got to take care of business and win this one.
Yeah, I worry a lot about the letdown factor, but I just do think that there's just more overall talent on this Brown team. The way Jake Wilcox is playing,
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
and they haven't skipped a beat at receiver, even though losing Wes Rocket, Graham Walker, they haven't skipped a beat.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be taking the Bears here. But if there's a game that Bryant's gonna get up for, it's gonna be this one. So I think this is gonna be close. I would maybe say like a 27-20 win, maybe something like that. So I think I would take Bryant with those points just for the fact that it's a rivalry game and they've had a little time off. So, yeah, I'll take Bryant the points, but I'm going to go with Brown.
This was a great game last year in Smithfield. Came down on the wire. Brown pulled it out. When you look at this game, I think the status of cornerback Isaiah Reed is still up in the air for Brown. That's huge because he's arguably the best defensive player in the Ivy League. And the other thing to keep in mind here is you got Landon Ruggieri on the other side, who's one of the best receivers in the CAA. Mm-hmm. Jared Guess and Ruggieri have been tearing it up so far for the Bulldogs. That's a tough combination to stop. Brown's going to have to get pressure up front defensively, and they're going to have to figure out a way to slow down Ruggieri because he is a terrific route runner who knows how to get open. I like Brown in this one too. I think it's a 7-point game, so I would take Bryant as a dog, but I could see this being a 28-21 kind of game. I think Bryant's going to hang around. The key for Bryant is their defense. Can Anthony Barisi's defense do enough to slow down this Brown offense, which has big play potential? We saw it last week with big plays from Solomon Miller and Matt Childs and Mark Mahoney. If Bryant's defense can play well enough to keep them in this one, anything's possible, as Kevin Garnett once taught us going into the fourth quarter. But I think that's easier said than done. They have not played well defensively this year. That has been a problem for them. Their defense has had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. The program has had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. I do think Bryant plays better, but I like Brown in this one. All right, next up we have Central Connecticut State at Yale. Yale is favored in this one by 6.5, coming off a 47-23 loss to Cornell. Central Connecticut State is coming off a 35-31 loss to UMass 2 weeks ago. They had a bye this week. This is a dangerous spot for Yale, Ryan. This is a pretty good Central Connecticut State team, led, of course, by former UMass quarterback Brady Olson, Elijah Howard at running back. We know how potent the offense can be. The defense is athletic, especially on the back end. They can generate turnovers. It's going to be a tough game for Yale.
Yeah, that bye week is huge for Central Connecticut, especially after having a really intense game the week before. I do like Yale here just as kind of I feel like they might have envisioned this as a get-right game, right? Had they lost one or both of these first two games. But it's not a soft landing for them with how the Blue Devils have played. So I'm going to go with Yale, but I'd be very surprised if this is a blowout, which is maybe what some folks have thought before coming into the season. So give me the Bulldogs, but I'm going to take the Blue Devils to be close in this.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bulldogs here to cover. I think 6.5 is a decent number, but I think they do win by 7. I think this will be a good game. I could see it being a 38-28 kind, 35-28 kind of game. Central Connecticut State's going to hang with them. They're going to play with them. They can score points. They can also run the football and ball control you a little bit. They can go a little LeVar Ball on you here in ball control. But I do think it's important that they get off to a good start, because if they do and they could score first and carry the play, I think that Yale could be in a little bit of trouble here. I don't see Yale's offense playing as poorly as they did for the last 2 weeks. Is that you or me?
Doing what?
That music that's coming through.
Hopefully it's not me.
I don't know where that's coming from, but it's odd but soothing.
Okay.
In any event, I like Yale in this one. I think they cover. I think it should be a pretty good game. But I do think that in the end, I think that the cream rises, and I think they are a little bit better. That was odd, by the way. It's gone now. Hopefully it doesn't come back.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. In any event, next up we have Penn at Dartmouth. Dartmouth is favored in this one by 3.5, even though Penn comes into this one at 1-1. Dartmouth coming in at 2-0 after a close win over Merrimack. For me, when I look at this game on paper, Ryan, if I'm Sammy McCorkle, I want to see my quarterback, my running back, my top wide receiver. I want to see my top skill dudes step up and play better. They need to play better because Penn is a stiffer challenge than Merrimack. I think this will be a pretty good football game here. I like Dartmouth at that number. I'm going to take them at 3.5. I think they win this one by 7. But I think that, Penn is Penn. They've perennially been one of the best programs in the Ivy League. This will be a stiff test for the Big Green.
I think if this game were in Pennsylvania, I would take the Quakers. They beat a very good Colgate team, only lost by 7 to a very, very talented Delaware team to start week 1. But I'm going to go with Dartmouth. I think, after last week, they're going to kind of shake things off and bring things home and kind of get things going again. But I wouldn't be surprised if Penn won, right? I mean, Aiden Sains is a very consistent quarterback.
He is.
They can run the ball.
One of the most experienced signal callers in the Ivy League.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a pretty good start so far. Malachi Hosley can run the ball pretty well. So I don't know. I almost am talking myself into maybe taking Penn here, but I'm going to go with maybe a homebody with Dartmouth and think that last week was kind of just an anomaly. So
yeah, Big Green definitely need to pull a Taylor Swift and shake it off.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go back to the CAA here. We got URI back in action after a bye week. They hit the road to take on Hampton. Hampton, of course, the Fighting Inns, the Hampton Inns, come into this game at 3-2. They're not the Inns. I believe they're the Pirates. Or maybe not. They're not the Pirates. It looks like they have a bird logo. I thought they used to be the Pirates.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah.
And I don't think they are. I will tell you right now. Maybe they are. Who knows? I don't know. I can't tell. In any event, URI is favored in this one by 3.5. Should be a good game. That Long Island game a couple weeks ago, at least in my opinion, left a lot to be desired if you're a URI fan. They've had the bye week to get healthy, get their house in order offensively. They've got to play better this week. This is a big game for them. This is usually the spot in URI schedule, Ryan, where I feel like they go from being a CAA contender to now chasing games to possibly get an at-large playoff berth. They need to go on the road and win this game because the following week, you get Brown at home for the Commonwealth Cup, the rivalry game. So they need a good effort this week. They need to go down to Hampton against a tough Hampton team and take care of business because, like I said, these are the spots in their schedule where in recent years under Jim Fleming, as good as they've been, they've tripped up and cost themselves a chance of winning the CAA and possibly a at-large playoff berth.
Yeah, I think where they're lucky here is that this isn't against an Albany or Villanova or an Elon, right? This Hampton team is not very talented. They were blown out last week by William and Mary. A close win against Howard. They beat Norfolk State, who's not very good. Their other win was against a team that I think is D2, D3. So give me the Rams here on a week of rest. and to keep that ranking, keep climbing, and but they need to cover 3.5. They need to look good. This needs to be like a 38 to like 20 game, right? 38-17. They need to really show that they're not that team anymore, right? And keep building momentum.
Yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is an opportunity for them, and I agree. I think they win and they cover that number. By the way, the FCS lines are made up by me and us. They're not real lines. You can't actually bet on them, and if you were betting on them, then you're a degenerate gambler. But
Yeah.
we all like to gamble, but I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But I do think that you're right. This is an opportunity for them to go down there and make a statement. You need to have momentum going into that Commonwealth Cup game against Brown. Brown could very well be coming into that one 3-0 with a boatload of momentum. There's the music again.
I'm not sure why.
I don't know which end that's coming in from, but there it is. Nonetheless, we were interrupted by the soothing sound of the strange music that's coming through our computers. In any event, I like URI as well. I think they cover. I think they have momentum going into that game against Brown. Next up, we're going to take a look at Norfolk State at Sacred Heart. Of course, Sacred Heart coming off back-to-back losses. As you mentioned, they host a Norfolk State program that coming into this one is 2-4. They're not very good. And speaking of not very good, Sacred Heart has not been very good. They got blown out at Delaware last week. 2 weeks ago, disappointing loss at Stonehill, 35-21. The offense has been there. Defense has been this program's calling card. The defense has been non-existent the last 2 weeks. It's been really disappointing. Coming off that big home win against Georgetown 3 weeks ago, this program is all of a sudden now reverting back to some of the issues that we've seen from them in recent years, where all of a sudden the defense isn't playing as well. The offense is scoring points, but they can't keep up. This is a big spot here for Sacred Heart. They need to get back to 500 with a win. This is a winnable game, but this has been a tough program to figure out through the years.
I'm going to take the Pios, but it's going to be like a 14-13 game. It's going to be an ugly game, right? Norfolk State
they're favored by 3.5. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll just because of who they are. I'll take Norfolk State just because of, like I said, how they've been playing. But it's tough, right? I try and think. All right, they played Delaware, very very talented team, right? There has to be something from that Georgetown game that is there, right? So I'm gonna go on that and hope that Michalski kind of figures things out. But I'll take the Pios, but I'm not taking them to cover 3.5.
Yeah. I'm gonna take the Pios here too. I do think they bounce back and win. I do think that they cover that. I know that that's a tight number, and you're right. They typically play a lot of these 20-14, 14-13 kind of games, but I think they get it done here, and I think that they win a close one. Our final matchup of the night to look ahead to is Stonehill hosting Wagner. Wagner coming in at 2-3. Stonehill at 1-2. The Skyhawks are favored in this one by 3.5 again. Wagner's played a pretty tough schedule. They got an experienced team back. Former player of mine, Derek Getchell, is the defensive coordinator there. Proud of Getch. He's done a great job with his coaching career, and should be a pretty good game here between two teams that are evenly matched. Stonehill starting to figure things out offensively after a slow start, coming off a bye, so they've had 2 weeks to get ready for Wagner. Wagner, of course, last week was down in Florida, taking on Florida Atlantic University, where they lost 41-10. Played tough, but they play Stonehill this week. 3.5 here. I like the Skyhawks. I think they cover, and actually, wait a minute. That's not what I wanted to say. I like the Skyhawks to win, but I don't think they cover. I think they win by 3 points here. I think it's a 23-20 kind of game.
Agreed. Yeah, I think I love the fact they're coming off a bye week. The Seahawks are becoming a little bit maybe battered potentially. So yeah, give me the Skyhawks as well. And to kind of be one of those games like, hey, remember last season when we kind of turned things around in the second half? We're still that team, right? Like that is the team and program we're trying to build here. So
yeah, and Wagner had an ugly loss to Robert Morris a couple of weeks ago. It's funny. I mean, they beat Lynchburg to start the season. Then they lose to Lehigh. They get blown out. Then they beat Delaware State. Then they lose a 21-14 game to Robert Morris, as I said, lose to FAU last week. He was coming off the UConn loss. You do have UMass in a few weeks as well, but Yeah, I like Stonehill here. I think that Asher Karaha has been a pitcher of consistency for them. He's been pretty good. But now all of a sudden you get Washington going, you get Woodward going, you get that running game going. Still young at receiver. That receiving core left a lot to be desired from an experience standpoint when I saw those guys during fall camp. They need to start to develop and come along here. But certainly, at least in the short term, they're going to be leaning on Karaha and these running backs, tight end Cody Ruff. They're going to be leaning on those guys to get the offense going. But I'm going to go with Stonehill here. But if I were putting the money on this one, I might put it on Wagner because I could see this being, like I said, a 23-20 kind of game. All right, Ryan, any final thoughts here before we wrap it up as we look ahead to another weekend of college football action in New England with our D1 programs?
No,
And there's the music. Perfect timing.
I couldn't take because I just have my thing up. My what's it called? My whatever it's called up. My spreadsheet I keep to prep stuff on.
Yeah.
No, I don't have too much. It's kind of a okay weekend across the slate for all college football. So, but it's starting to get nice, starting to be sweatshirt weather. That's just like football's like really coming into bloom, right? If it was a flower, it's like it'd be starting to really bud now, which is like just gets me going. I love it so much. So I'm excited. It's a lot of trap games though for some of our programs. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I am too. And you bring up a great point with the sweatshirt weather. You're definitely noticing the difference. Although this weekend looks pretty nice, it's still going to be late summer weather. It should be in the low 70s on Saturday, although there is some forecast for rain. So keep that in mind. Sunday, it'll be beautiful though for the Patriots Dolphins. It's supposed to be sunny and in the mid 60s. So, all right, Ryan, great job. Again, we don't know where this background music came in, but it did somehow. A little spooky, not going to lie. And it's October, so it is Halloween month.
Makes sense.
Ryan, great stuff as always, my friend. Let's do this again next week.
All right, sounds good.
All right. That'll do it for this week's episode of the College Football Preview Show. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Serenitas. Till next week, get out there and enjoy the games.